Imagine this. You are walking through a vast desert landscape, an endless expanse of scorching sands beneath your feet, and a blazing sun overhead. The air is dry and there is no sign of life for miles. But then, as if defying the very laws of nature, something incredible catches your eye. Partially exposed from under the desert sands is what seems to be the remains of an ancient wooden ship. That's right, a ship in the desert, far away from any sea or river. How could this be? What is a vessel doing buried beneath the sands, where no water has flowed for thousands of years? This is no science fiction story. It's a reality that has baffled historians and archaeologists for years. Ancient ships, dating back thousands of years, even older than the pyramids, have been discovered in deserts around the world. These findings challenge everything we thought we knew about ancient civilizations, trade routes, and the very geography of the Earth in ancient times. These ships are not just remnants of a forgotten era. They represent a lost chapter in human history, one that could completely reshape our understanding of how ancient peoples lived, traveled, and interacted with the world around them. In today's video, we're going to explore the mind-bending discoveries of these ancient ships buried deep within desert landscapes and discuss what they mean for our understanding of the ancient world. We'll delve into the facts, explore the mysteries, and consider some of the more controversial theories surrounding these finds. And, perhaps most importantly, we'll look at how these discoveries may indicate that human civilization is much older and more complex than we have been led to believe. Setting the historical stage. Before the pyramids. When most people think of the ancient world, they immediately think of the Great Pyramids of Egypt, particularly the Pyramid of Giza. Built over 4,500 years ago, the pyramids have stood the test of time, towering over the desert sands as one of the most iconic symbols of ancient human achievement. The Great Pyramid of Giza, often considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, is believed to have been constructed during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, around 2560 BC. But here's the kicker. While the pyramids represent an era of advanced engineering and civilization, they are not the oldest monuments or structures on Earth. And as impressive as the pyramids are, the discovery of ancient ships buried in deserts suggests that there may have been advanced civilizations that thrived long before the pyramid building era. To understand how groundbreaking these ship discoveries are, we first need to establish a timeline. The Great Pyramid of Giza was completed around 2560 BC. For centuries, it has been a symbol of early advanced civilization. But recent discoveries suggest that humans were building sophisticated vessels and potentially engaging in long-distance trade thousands of years earlier. Understanding ancient Egypt's maritime prowess, even before the first stones of the pyramids were laid, ancient Egyptians were already masters of the Nile. The Nile River, which stretches over 6,600 kilometers, was not just the lifeblood of Egyptian civilization. It was also the primary mode of transportation. Ancient Egyptians used boats to travel, trade, and transport goods up and down the river, facilitating the growth of one of the world's earliest civilizations. But Egypt's relationship with water extended far beyond the Nile. Evidence suggests that the Egyptians were also capable of seafaring, with ships designed to navigate the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. In fact, ancient Egyptian texts and carvings depict elaborate ships used for both trade and exploration. However, the discoveries of ancient ships in deserts, far away from any modern body of water, raise important questions. How did these ships end up in such remote locations? Were they part of a long-forgotten trade network that existed before Egypt's dominance? Or were they remnants of a maritime culture that predated even the pyramids? The Abdos Ship. The game-changing discovery, one of the most significant discoveries in the field of ancient maritime archaeology, occurred in 2009, when archaeologists uncovered the remains of a large wooden ship in the Egyptian desert near Abdos, a site famous for its ancient temples and royal tombs. What made this find extraordinary wasn't just the size of the ship, but its location, far from the Nile and buried beneath layers of sand. At first, it was assumed that the ship was part of a ceremonial burial, perhaps connected to a royal tomb. After all, ancient Egyptians often buried ships alongside their dead, believing that these vessels would carry the souls of the deceased into the afterlife. But this particular ship was different. It was older, much older than the pyramids. The age of the Abdos Ship. Older than the pyramids, carbon dating of the Abdos Ship revealed something truly astonishing. The ship was over 5,000 years old, dating back to around 3000 BC. This meant that the ship was constructed before the Pyramid of Khufu and long before Egypt's most famous monuments were ever built. The implications of this discovery were profound. Here was a ship meticulously crafted using advanced techniques, built at a time when most historians believed human civilizations were still in their infancy. The Abdos Ship showed that ancient Egyptians, or their predecessors, were already highly skilled in shipbuilding long before the construction of the pyramids. But this raised another question. Why was the ship found in the desert? Exploring the desert ship mystery. How did they get there? As more ships were uncovered in deserts around the world, archaeologists and historians began to piece together a broader picture. It became clear that these ships weren't just isolated incidents. Similar discoveries had been made in other deserts, from the Arabian Peninsula to Iran, and even as far away as South America. Each of these finds raised the same question. How did these ships end up in the desert? Theories on the location of the ships. One of the most widely accepted theories is that the deserts where these ships were found were not always dry. Thousands of years ago, many of the world's deserts were actually lush, green landscapes filled with rivers, lakes, and wetlands. Over time, as the Earth's climate shifted, these areas dried up, leaving behind deserts where water once flowed. In the case of the Abdos ship, some researchers believe that the region was once part of a network of waterways that connected ancient Egypt to the Red Sea. If true, this would suggest that ancient Egyptians, or their predecessors, were capable of long-distance sea travel thousands of years before recorded history. In other parts of the world, similar theories have emerged. For example, in the deserts of Iran, researchers discovered what appeared to be the remains of an ancient ship buried beneath layers of sand. The region, known for its harsh, arid climate, was once home to a vast inland sea that gradually dried up over millennia. The ship, now fossilized, was likely stranded as the sea receded, eventually becoming buried by the shifting sands. The role of climate change in ancient ship discoveries. To understand how these ships ended up in deserts, we need to look at the role of climate change throughout history. Thousands of years ago, the Earth's climate was vastly different from what it is today. Deserts like the Sahara and the Arabian Peninsula were once lush, green landscapes filled with rivers, lakes, and wetlands. These areas supported thriving ecosystems, and early human civilizations took advantage of the fertile land for agriculture, trade, and exploration. The Green Sahara Hypothesis, a lost world beneath the sand. One of the most compelling examples of this is the Sahara Desert, which was once a verdant region known as the Green Sahara. From around 10,000 BC to 3000 BC, the Sahara was home to numerous lakes and rivers that supported human settlements and animal life. Archaeological evidence from the region shows that early human societies thrived in this environment, engaging in farming, fishing, and trade. However, around 3000 BC, the climate began to change. The AfricanHumid Period came to an end, and the Sahara gradually transformed into the desert we know today. As the lakes and rivers dried up, the people who lived there were forced to migrate, abandoning their settlements and, in some cases, their boats. These abandoned vessels were eventually buried by shifting sands, preserved for thousands of years beneath the desert's surface. More desert ship discoveries around the world. As the discoveries of ancient ships in deserts continued, it became evident that this phenomenon was not limited to Egypt or the Middle East. In fact, similar finds began to surface in other parts of the world, adding a global dimension to the mystery of these desert ships. Ships in the deserts of Saudi Arabia. The Empty Quarter. One of the most puzzling discoveries occurred in the vast desert of Saudi Arabia, specifically in the region known as the Rub al-Khali, or the Empty Quarter. The Rub al-Khali is the largest continuous sand desert in the world, stretching across much of the Arabian Peninsula. For centuries, this region was considered one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, with temperatures soaring above 50 degrees Celsius, 122 degrees, and virtually no water in sight. Yet, buried beneath the dunes of the Empty Quarter, researchers uncovered the remnants of ancient ships. These discoveries baffled archaeologists. How could ships, some of which dated back thousands of years, end up in a region that had not seen significant bodies of water in millennia? While the Empty Quarter is an arid desert today, geological evidence suggests that the area was once much wetter, with rivers and lakes that may have supported maritime activity. Satellite imagery and geological surveys revealed ancient riverbeds and lake basins beneath the sands of the Empty Quarter. It is believed that these waterways may have existed as recently as 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, around the same time that some of the discovered ships were in use. This supports the theory that the ships were part of a thriving trade network that connected the Arabian Peninsula with other regions of the ancient world. The role of the ancient maritime Silk Road. Another key theory related to these discoveries is the possibility that they were linked to the Maritime Silk Road, a vast network of trade routes that connected civilizations across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. The Maritime Silk Road was known to facilitate the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. And it is possible that these ancient ships were part of this network long before the well-documented land-based Silk Road emerged. The ships discovered in the deserts of Saudi Arabia may have been used to transport goods such as spices, textiles, and precious metals between regions, navigating rivers and seas that no longer exist today. The drying up of these waterways due to climate change would have led to the abandonment of the ships, which were eventually buried by the shifting sands of the desert. The Atacama Desert, ships on the other side of the world. Thousands of miles away from the deserts of Egypt and Arabia, in the South American country of Chile, another astonishing discovery was made. In the Atacama Desert, one of the driest places on Earth, archaeologists uncovered the remains of ancient boats made from reeds and wood buried beneath the arid landscape. The Atacama Desert is an extreme environment, with some parts of it receiving less than a millimetre of rainfall each year. Despite the harsh conditions, the desert has been inhabited for thousands of years by indigenous peoples who developed unique ways to survive in this unforgiving landscape. But the discovery of ancient boats in the desert suggests that the region was once very different. A maritime culture in the desert. The boats discovered in the Atacama Desert are believed to be around 6,000 years old, predating the rise of the Incan Empire by millennia. The boats were made from materials that would have been readily available at the time, such as reeds, which were harvested from the nearby rivers and lakes. These boats were likely used for fishing and transportation along the region's ancient waterways. Geological studies have shown that the Atacama Desert was once home to a series of rivers and lakes that supported a thriving ecosystem. These waterways eventually dried up due to changes in the Earth's climate, leaving behind a barren desert where no water flows today. The boats, once vital to the region's inhabitants, were abandoned as the rivers disappeared, eventually becoming buried under the desert sands. This discovery adds another piece to the puzzle of ancient desert ships. It suggests that the phenomenon of ships being stranded in deserts was not unique to the Middle East, but was part of a global pattern that occurred as ancient climates shifted and waterways disappeared. Forgotten civilizations. The theory of a lost maritime culture. One of the most intriguing aspects of the discoveries of ancient ships in deserts is the possibility that they point to the existence of a forgotten maritime culture, a civilization, or perhaps multiple civilizations, that thrived long before the rise of the Egyptians, Sumerians, or Minoans. This theory suggests that these early civilizations were highly skilled in maritime trade and exploration, using ships to navigate rivers, lakes, and seas that have long since disappeared. The pre-Egyptian maritime hypothesis, the theory of a lost maritime culture, gained traction with the discovery of the Abdos Ship in Egypt, as well as the ships found in the deserts of Saudi Arabia, Iran, and South America. According to this hypothesis, the ancestors of the ancient Egyptians may have been seafaring people who relied on water-based transportation and trade long before they settled along the Nile. This theory challenges the traditional view that early human civilizations were primarily land-based, developing around rivers and fertile plains. Instead, it suggests that early humans may have been more mobile, using ships to explore and trade across vast distances. These maritime networks could have connected distant regions, allowing for the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies long before the development of land-based trade routes like the Silk Road. The case for a global maritime network, if early civilizations were indeed part of a global maritime network, it raises important questions about the origins of human society. Could the ships discovered in the deserts be evidence of a forgotten global culture, one that spanned continents and seas? There is some evidence to support this theory. Similarities in shipbuilding techniques and maritime culture can be found in regions as far apart as Egypt, Mesopotamia, South America, and the Arabian Peninsula. These similarities suggest that ancient peoples may have shared knowledge of shipbuilding and navigation, either through direct contact or through the diffusion of ideas across maritime trade routes. For example, ancient ships discovered in the Mediterranean, dating back over 4,000 years, show remarkable craftsmanship and design, with many of the same techniques used in the construction of the Abdos Ship and other vessels found in the desert. These similarities suggest that shipbuilders from different regions may have been sharing ideas and innovations, much in the same way that modern societies exchange technology and knowledge. The controversial Atlantis theory. Was there a lost maritime civilization? No discussion of ancient maritime civilizations would be complete without mentioning one of the most enduring and controversial theories of all, the legend of Atlantis. According to the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, Atlantis was a powerful and advanced civilization that existed thousands of years ago, but was ultimately destroyed in a catastrophic event. The story of Atlantis has fascinated historians, archaeologists, and explorers for centuries, with many searching for evidence of the lost civilization beneath the sea. While the story of Atlantis is often regarded as a myth, some researchers believe that there may be a kernel of truth behind the legend. Could Atlantis have been a real civilization? One that was wiped out by a natural disaster such as a flood or a sudden rise in sea levels? And could the ships discovered in the deserts be evidence of a lost maritime culture that predated even the Egyptians? The cataclysmic event hypothesis, one theory, suggests that the civilization of Atlantis, if it existed, may have been part of a broader global maritime culture that thrived during the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower. According to this hypothesis, as the ice age came to an end and sea levels rose, coastal cities and settlements were flooded, forcing the survivors to migrate inland. As they fled, they may have abandoned their ships, leaving them stranded in what would later become deserts as the Earth's climate continued to shift. The sudden rise in sea levels, combined with other natural disasters such as earthquakes or volcanic eruptions, could have wiped out much of this ancient maritime civilization, leaving only scattered remnants behind. The ships discovered in deserts may be some of the few surviving artifacts of this lost world, preserved beneath the sands for thousands of years. The oldest ship yet. The discovery in Turkey in 2022, archaeologists in Turkey made what may be the most significant discovery yet in the search for ancient ships. While excavating in the Eastern Anatolian desert, they uncovered the petrified remains of a large wooden vessel, buried deep beneath layers of sediment and volcanic ash. What made this discovery particularly exciting was its age. Preliminary analysis suggests that the ship could be as old as 7,500 years, making it the oldest known ship in human history. The Ancient Anatolian Sea. The region where the ship was found was once part of a large inland sea, which gradually dried up over thousands of years. However, the ship's location, over 100 miles from what would have been the ancient coastline, has led researchers to speculate that it may have been transported overland before being buried, possibly as part of an ancient burial ritual. Radiocarbon dating and the implications for human history using advanced radiocarbon dating techniques. Researchers estimate that the ship was constructed between 7,000 and 7,500 years ago, which places it at the very beginning of the Neolithic period. This discovery challenges the traditional timeline of human technological development, as it suggests that early humans were building advanced maritime vessels thousands of years earlier than previously thought. The ship found in Turkey is not only the oldest known vessel, but also one of the most well-preserved, thanks to the layers of volcanic ash that covered it. The ship's construction techniques, including the use of wooden planks and mortise and tenon joints, show a high level of craftsmanship and suggest that the people who built it were highly skilled shipwrights. The impact of ancient trade networks. Connecting civilizations. One of the most fascinating aspects of these ancient desert ship discoveries is what they reveal about early trade networks. It's clear that maritime technology and trade routes played a significant role in connecting ancient civilizations, possibly even more so than land-based routes like the Silk Road. The ships discovered in deserts, many of which are thousands of years old, suggest that trade was conducted over vast distances long before recorded history. But what exactly were these ancient ships carrying? And why were these maritime routes so important for early civilizations? To answer these questions, we need to delve into the types of goods that were likely being traded and the regions that were connected through these ancient networks. The commodities of the ancient world. In the ancient world, certain commodities were highly prized and traded across great distances. Some of the most valuable goods included gold, silver, spices, textiles, and precious stones. These items were often transported via ships, as water travel allowed for faster and more efficient movement of large quantities of goods compared to overland routes. Spices were particularly valuable in the ancient world, as they were not only used for cooking, but also for religious ceremonies, preservation of food, and medicinal purposes. Spices such as cinnamon, frankincense, myrrh, and black pepper were highly sought after, and were often traded between regions as far apart as India, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Mediterranean. Precious metals, including gold and silver, were also vital to ancient trade networks. These metals were often mined in one region and transported to other areas where they were used to make jewelry, coins, and religious artifacts. In some cases, entire civilizations became wealthy due to their control over trade routes and access to valuable resources. Textiles such as silk, linen, and wool were another major commodity. The production of fine fabrics was often a closely guarded secret, and the demand for luxurious textiles helped fuel trade across continents. Ships carrying silk from China or linen from Egypt may have traveled thousands of miles, making their way to distant markets in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. These valuable goods were likely transported along the ancient maritime routes that connected civilizations across the ancient world. But as climate change and shifting landscapes transformed once thriving regions into deserts, these trade routes collapsed, leaving the ships and the goods they carried buried beneath the sands. The role of climate change. A global perspective. One of the recurring themes in the story of ancient desert ships is the role of climate change. Thousands of years ago, many of the regions that are now arid deserts were lush, green landscapes filled with rivers, lakes, and fertile plains. Early human civilizations thrived in these regions, relying on the abundant water and resources for agriculture, trade, and transportation. But as the Earth's climate began to change, these regions underwent a dramatic transformation. Rivers dried up, lakes disappeared, and once fertile lands became deserts. The ships that were once used to navigate these waterways were left stranded as the water receded, eventually becoming buried beneath layers of sand. Understanding the Holocene climate shift, the period of climate change that likely stranded these ships occurred during the Holocene epoch, which began around 11,700 years ago and continues to the present day. The Holocene is characterized by a warming climate following the end of the last ice age, which led to the retreat of glaciers and a rise in global sea levels. However, this period also saw significant regional variations in climate, with some areas becoming wetter while others experienced increased aridification. For example, during the early Holocene, the Sahara Desert was a lush green landscape, home to numerous lakes, rivers, and wetlands. This period, known as the AfricanHumid Period, allowed early human societies to flourish in what is now one of the driest places on Earth. Archaeological evidence from the region shows that the people who lived there engaged in farming, fishing, and trade, with some scholars suggesting that the Sahara was part of a larger network of maritime trade routes. However, around 6,000 years ago, the AfricanHumid Period came to an end, and the Sahara began to dry up. As the climate changed, the lakes and rivers that had sustained human life disappeared, forcing the people who lived there to abandon their settlements. The ships they used to navigate these waterways were left behind, eventually becoming buried by the sands of the desert. The mystery of the petrified ships, in addition to wooden ships buried in the sands, researchers have also discovered what appear to be petrified ships in some desert regions. These ships, which have been fossilized over thousands of years, are even more mysterious because they are often found far from any ancient waterways. One such discovery was made in the deserts of Iran, where archaeologists found the petrified remains of a large ship buried beneath layers of sediment. The ship's location, hundreds of miles from the nearest body of water, suggests that it may have been stranded as the region's climate changed, leaving the ship fossilized over millennia. How do ships become petrified? The process of petrification occurs when organic material, such as wood, is gradually replaced by minerals over time. This process typically takes place in environments where the conditions are just right, such as areas with high levels of sediment or volcanic ash. Over thousands of years, the organic material is replaced by minerals like silica, turning the once living wood into stone. In the case of the ships found in Iran and other desert regions, it is believed that they were buried by layers of sediment, which protected them from decay. As the surrounding environment changed, mineral-rich water may have seeped into the wood, causing the process of petrification to begin. Over thousands of years, the ship was transformed into a fossil, preserved beneath the sands. These petrified ships provide valuable insight into the history of ancient maritime cultures. They suggest that these ships were used at a time when the region was much wetter and connected by rivers and lakes that no longer exist. The process of petrification also means that these ships are incredibly well preserved, allowing researchers to study their construction techniques and materials in detail. The forgotten role of maritime technology in human history. The discovery of ancient ships buried in deserts raises important questions about the role of maritime technology in early human history. Traditionally, historians have focused on land-based civilizations, such as the Egyptians, Sumerians, and the Indus Valley culture, as the cradles of human civilization. These cultures are often credited with developing advanced agriculture, writing systems, and monumental architecture. However, the existence of ancient ships, some of which are older than the pyramids, suggests that maritime technology may have played an equally important role in the development of early human societies. Ships allowed for long-distance trade, exploration, and communication between distant regions, making it possible for early civilizations to exchange goods, ideas, and technologies. The role of ships in expanding. Early human influence. Ships were one of the most important technologies of the ancient world, allowing humans to travel across vast distances that would have been impossible to traverse on foot. Maritime technology enabled early human societies to establish trade routes between distant regions, bringing new resources and wealth to their communities. For example, ancient Egyptians used ships to trade goods like gold, ivory, and ebony with their neighbors to the south in Nubia, and to the east with civilizations in the Levant and Mesopotamia. The ships allowed the Egyptians to establish extensive trade networks that helped fuel the growth of their civilization. Similarly, the Phoenicians, one of the great seafaring cultures of the ancient world, used ships to explore and colonize distant lands, establishing cities as far away as Spain and North Africa. The Phoenicians' mastery of shipbuilding and navigation allowed them to dominate Mediterranean trade for centuries, spreading their influence across the region. Could these ships be evidence of an even older civilization? One of the more controversial theories surrounding the discovery of ancient desert ships is the possibility that they could be evidence of a civilization that predates even the Egyptians, Sumerians, and other early cultures. According to this theory, these ships may have belonged to a lost civilization that was highly advanced in maritime technology, but was eventually wiped out by a cataclysmic event such as a massive flood or climate shift. 10. The prehistoric seafaring hypothesis. Some researchers believe that the existence of ancient ships, particularly those that predate the pyramids, points to the possibility that early humans were capable of long-distance sea travel much earlier than previously thought. This theory, known as the prehistoric seafaring hypothesis, suggests that early humans may have used ships to explore and colonize new lands long before the development of complex land-based civilizations. One of the key pieces of evidence for this theory is the similarity in shipbuilding techniques found in regions as far apart as Egypt, Mesopotamia, and South America. These similarities suggest that ancient peoples may have shared knowledge of shipbuilding and navigation, either through direct contact or through the diffusion of ideas across maritime trade routes. If the prehistoric seafaring hypothesis is correct, it could mean that early humans were far more mobile and interconnected than we ever imagined. Instead of developing in isolation, early civilizations may have been part of a global network of trade and exploration, with ships serving as the primary means of communication and commerce. Could climate change have erased an entire chapter of human history? The discovery of ancient ships in deserts also raises an intriguing question. Could climate change have erased an entire chapter of human history? As we've seen, many of the regions where these ships were found were once home to lakes, rivers, and seas that have since disappeared. The collapse of these ecosystems likely had a devastating impact on the people who lived there, forcing them to abandon their homes, their ships, and their way of life. The collapse of early maritime cultures. The end of the AfricanHumid Period, which transformed the Sahara from a lush, green landscape into a desert, likely had a significant impact on the maritime cultures that once thrived there. As the rivers and lakes dried up, these cultures would have been forced to adapt or perish. The ships that once carried them across vast waterways were abandoned, left to be buried by the encroaching sands. Similarly, the drying up of ancient lakes and rivers in the Arabian Peninsula and Iran may have led to the collapse of early maritime cultures in those regions. The ships that were used for trade and transportation were no longer needed, and over time, they became fossilized relics of a forgotten era. Could there be more ancient ships waiting to be discovered? The discovery of ancient ships in deserts suggests that there may be many more ships waiting to be found beneath the sands. As technology improves, archaeologists are using tools like satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar to search for hidden archaeological sites. These tools could help researchers uncover even more evidence of ancient maritime cultures buried deep beneath the desert. The use of modern technology in discovering ancient ships. One of the most fascinating developments in recent years is the use of modern technology to uncover ancient ships buried beneath desert sands. While traditional excavation methods have been invaluable in uncovering these relics of the past, new technologies are allowing archaeologists to discover ships that would have otherwise remained hidden. The role of satellite imaging in desert archaeology. One of the most powerful tools in modern archaeology is satellite imaging. By using high-resolution satellite imagery, researchers can identify subtle changes in the landscape that may indicate the presence of ancient structures or ships buried beneath the surface. This technology has been particularly useful in desert environments, where the shifting sands often obscure the evidence of ancient civilizations. For example, NASA's Landsat satellites have been instrumental in mapping out ancient riverbeds and lakes that existed thousands of years ago in regions like the Sahara Desert. These maps have helped archaeologists identify areas where ancient ships may have once been stranded, leading to some of the most significant discoveries in recent years. Satellite imagery has also revealed previously unknown archaeological sites in regions like Saudi Arabia, where the empty quarter holds countless secrets beneath its vast dunes. By identifying changes in the sand patterns, researchers have been able to pinpoint potential excavation sites, allowing them to focus their efforts on areas that are most likely to yield ancient ships and other artifacts. Ground-penetrating radar, peering beneath the sands. In addition to satellite imagery, another revolutionary tool in the discovery of ancient ships is ground-penetrating radar, GPR. GPR allows archaeologists to detect buried objects by sending electromagnetic pulses into the ground and analyzing the reflected signals. This technology is especially useful in desert environments, where the dry sand provides an ideal medium for radar signals to penetrate. With GPR, researchers can detect large objects like ships buried several meters beneath the surface without the need for invasive digging. This has not only sped up the process of locating ancient ships, but has also reduced the risk of damaging these fragile artifacts during excavation. For instance, GPR was used extensively during the excavation of the Abdos Ship in Egypt, allowing archaeologists to map out the full extent of the ship's remains before any digging began. This technology has since been used in other desert regions, such as the Arabian Peninsula and Iran, leading to the discovery of additional ships that had been buried for millennia. LiDAR scanning, a new frontier in archaeological exploration. Another cutting-edge technology that has transformed the field of archaeology is LiDAR, light detection and ranging. LiDAR uses laser pulses to create detailed 3D maps of the landscape, even in areas covered by dense vegetation or sand. By stripping away the surface layers, LiDAR can reveal hidden structures and objects that would otherwise be invisible to the naked eye. LiDAR has already revolutionized archaeology in places like Central America, where it has revealed the sprawling remains of ancient Mayan cities hidden beneath the jungle. But it's also being used in desert environments, where it has the potential to uncover buried ships and other artifacts. By scanning the desert floor, researchers can identify anomalies in the sand that may indicate the presence of ancient vessels or settlements. AI and machine learning, revolutionizing archaeological discoveries. As technology continues to advance, artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning are playing an increasingly important role in archaeology. These tools can analyze vast amounts of satellite imagery, radar data, and LiDAR scans to identify patterns and anomalies that may indicate the presence of ancient ships or other structures. By training AI algorithms to recognize the telltale signs of buried ships, researchers can automate the process of identifying potential excavation sites, dramatically speeding up the discovery process. This technology has the potential to revolutionize the field of archaeology, making it possible to uncover ancient ships in deserts around the world with unprecedented speed and accuracy. The impact of desert ship discoveries on our understanding of ancient trade. The discovery of ancient ships in desert environments has had a profound impact on our understanding of ancient trade routes and the extent of early human exploration. These ships provide valuable evidence of the long-distance trade networks that connected civilizations across vast regions, allowing for the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. The expansion of ancient trade networks. Before the discovery of desert ships, historians believed that most early trade networks were limited to land routes, such as the Silk Road, which connected China to the Mediterranean. However, the existence of ancient ships buried in deserts suggests that maritime trade routes may have been just as important, if not more so, in the development of early civilizations. These ships, some of which date back over 7,000 years, provide evidence that ancient peoples were capable of navigating long distances by sea, connecting regions that would have otherwise been isolated from one another. This suggests that early civilizations were not confined to the fertile river valleys where they first arose, but were instead part of a larger, interconnected world. For example, the discovery of ships in the Arabian Peninsula and Iran suggests that these regions were once part of a vast trade network that connected the Middle East to South Asia and Africa. Goods such as spices, textiles, and precious metals may have been transported by ship along ancient rivers and seas, facilitating the exchange of wealth and knowledge between distant cultures. The role of ships in the spread of ideas and technology. In addition to facilitating trade, ships played a crucial role in the spread of ideas and technology across the ancient world. The ability to travel long distances by sea allowed early humans to exchange not only goods, but also knowledge, leading to the rapid dissemination of new technologies and innovations. For example, it is believed that the ancient Egyptians learned advanced shipbuilding techniques from their neighbors to the east, such as the Phoenicians and the Mesopotamians. These techniques allowed the Egyptians to construct larger and more seaworthy vessels, enabling them to explore and trade with distant regions. Similarly, the spread of agriculture, metallurgy, and writing systems across the ancient world may have been facilitated by maritime trade routes. Ships provided a means for early humans to exchange knowledge and ideas, allowing for the rapid development of new technologies and the rise of complex societies. The influence of maritime trade on ancient societies. The existence of ancient ships buried in deserts also sheds light on the importance of maritime trade in shaping early societies. In many cases, the wealth generated by long-distance trade helped fuel the growth of powerful civilizations, allowing them to construct monumental architecture, develop advanced technologies, and expand their influence over vast regions. For example, the wealth generated by trade along the Nile River and the Mediterranean Sea helped fund the construction of the pyramids and other monumental structures in ancient Egypt. Similarly, the rise of powerful city-states like Ur and Babylon in Mesopotamia was driven in part by their control of key trade routes along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Maritime trade also played a key role in the expansion of Phoenician influence across the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians, who were known for their seafaring prowess, established colonies as far away as Spain and North Africa, spreading their culture and influence across the region. Their ships, which were among the most advanced of the ancient world, allowed them to dominate Mediterranean trade for centuries, making them one of the wealthiest and most powerful civilizations of their time. The global implications of desert ship discoveries. The discovery of ancient ships in deserts around the world has far-reaching implications for our understanding of global history. These ships suggest that early human civilizations were far more interconnected than previously believed, with maritime trade playing a central role in the development of early societies. A global maritime culture. One of the most intriguing possibilities raised by the discovery of desert ships is the idea that early humans may have been part of a global maritime culture. According to this theory, early civilizations were not confined to isolated river valleys or coastal regions, but were instead connected by a vast network of trade routes that spanned continents and seas. This theory challenges the traditional view of early human history, which tends to focus on land-based civilizations like the Egyptians, Sumerians, and the Indus Valley culture. Instead, it suggests that maritime technology played an equally important, if not more important, role in shaping the development of early human societies. If this theory is correct, it would mean that early humans were far more mobile and interconnected than we ever imagined. Ships allowed them to explore new lands, establish colonies, and exchange goods and ideas across vast distances. This global network of trade and exploration may have been responsible for the rapid spread of technologies like agriculture, metallurgy, and writing systems, helping to accelerate the rise of complex civilizations. The collapse of ancient maritime cultures, the discovery of desert ships also raises important questions about the collapse of ancient maritime cultures. As we've seen, many of the regions where these ships were found were once home to thriving ecosystems, with rivers, lakes, and seas that supported maritime trade. However, as the Earth's climate changed and these waterways disappeared, the civilizations that relied on them may have been forced to adapt or collapse. For example, the collapse of the AfricanHumid Period, which transformed the Sahara from a lush, green landscape into a desert, likely had a devastating impact on the maritime cultures that once thrived there. Similarly, the drying up of ancient lakes and rivers in the Arabian Peninsula and Iran may have led to the collapse of early maritime cultures in those regions. These collapses may have been part of a larger pattern of environmental change that affected ancient civilizations around the world. As climate change transformed once fertile regions into deserts, the people who lived there were forced to abandon their settlements and their ships, leaving the ships behind to be buried beneath the sands. Over time, these ships, once vital to ancient trade and exploration, became relics of a lost era, preserved under the desert surface for thousands of years. The climate catastrophe hypothesis. Did climate change destroy a global maritime culture? One of the most controversial theories surrounding the discovery of ancient ships in deserts is the possibility that climate change played a major role in the collapse of a once thriving global maritime culture. According to this hypothesis, ancient civilizations that relied on maritime trade and exploration were devastated by sudden and dramatic climate shifts, which dried up the rivers and seas that sustained their way of life. The end of the AfricanHumid Period. The AfricanHumid Period, which lasted from around 10,000 BC to 3000 BC, is one of the most well-documented examples of a climate catastrophe that transformed a once thriving region into a desert. During this period, the Sahara Desert was a lush, green landscape, home to numerous lakes, rivers, and wetlands. Archaeological evidence shows that early human societies thrived in this environment, engaging in agriculture, fishing, and trade. However, around 3000 BC, the AfricanHumid Period came to a sudden and catastrophic end. As the Earth's climate shifted, the rains that had sustained the region disappeared, and the Sahara began to dry up. Over the course of just a few centuries, the once fertile landscape was transformed into a vast desert, forcing the people who lived there to abandon their homes and migrate to other regions. The impacts of the end of the humid period. The collapse of the AfricanHumid Period likely had a profound impact on the maritime cultures that once thrived in the region. The rivers and lakes that had been used for trade and transportation disappeared, leaving ships stranded in what was rapidly becoming an arid wasteland. Without access to these waterways, early human societies may have been forced to abandon their ships, which were eventually buried by the shifting sands. This dramatic transformation of the landscape may have been part of a larger pattern of climate change that affected other regions of the world as well. Similar shifts in climate occurred in the Middle East, South America, and other parts of the globe, leading to the collapse of once thriving civilizations. The discovery of ancient ships in deserts across these regions suggests that maritime cultures were particularly vulnerable to these changes, as they relied heavily on access to water for trade, exploration, and survival. The role of rising sea levels in ancient civilization. Another significant factor that may have contributed to the collapse of ancient maritime cultures is the rise in global sea levels that occurred at the end of the last ice age. As the ice sheets covering much of the northern hemisphere began to melt, sea levels rose dramatically, flooding coastal regions and displacing human populations. It is possible that some of the ships discovered in deserts today were once part of coastal cities or ports that were inundated by rising sea levels. As the waters rose, these ships may have been abandoned and eventually transported inland by natural forces, such as floods or shifting sands, where they were preserved beneath the desert floor. In some cases, entire civilizations may have been wiped out by these rising sea levels. The legendary city of Atlantis. described by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, is one example of a lost civilization that was said to have been destroyed by a great flood. While Atlantis is often considered a myth, it is possible that it was based on real events, with rising sea levels contributing to the destruction of ancient maritime cultures around the world. The role of ancient ships in cultural exchange and exploration. The discovery of ancient ships in deserts also highlights the role of maritime technology in the cultural exchange and exploration of the ancient world. Ships were not only used for trade, but also served as a means for early humans to explore new lands, establish colonies, and exchange ideas and knowledge across vast distances. The spread of maritime knowledge. One of the key ways in which ancient ships facilitated cultural exchange was through the spread of maritime knowledge. As ships travelled between distant regions, they carried not only goods, but also knowledge of shipbuilding, navigation, and maritime technology. This allowed civilizations to share their innovations and adapt them to their own needs, leading to the rapid advancement of maritime technology in different parts of the world. For example, the Phoenicians, who were among the most skilled seafarers of the ancient world, are believed to have spread their knowledge of shipbuilding and navigation throughout the Mediterranean. Their ships, known for their speed and durability, allowed them to explore distant lands and establish colonies in places like Carthage, Spain, and Sardinia. The Phoenicians' influence on Mediterranean trade and culture was immense, and their ships played a central role in their ability to connect and dominate maritime trade routes. Similarly, the Polynesians of the Pacific Ocean were master navigators, using sophisticated methods to sail across thousands of miles of open water to colonize remote islands. The Polynesians' ability to navigate vast distances without modern instruments remains one of the greatest achievements of human exploration, and their ships, which were highly advanced for their time, were essential to their success. Exploration and colonization. In addition to facilitating trade, ancient ships were also crucial for exploration and colonization. Early human societies used ships to explore new lands, establish settlements, and expand their territories. This process of exploration and colonization helped to shape the development of civilizations and led to the spread of cultures, languages, and ideas across the globe. For example, the ancient Greeks used ships to explore and colonize distant lands in the Mediterranean, establishing cities such as Marseille in what is now France and Cyrene in modern-day Libya. These colonies became centers of trade, culture, and knowledge, helping to spread Greek culture and influence throughout the region. Similarly, the Vikings of Northern Europe used their longships to explore and settle new lands, including Iceland, Greenland, and even parts of North America. The Vikings' ships, which were designed for both open sea voyages and river travel, allowed them to travel vast distances and establish colonies in some of the most remote and inhospitable regions of the world. The spread of religion and cultural practices. The movement of ships across ancient trade and exploration routes also facilitated the spread of religion and cultural practices. As early human societies came into contact with one another through maritime trade, they exchanged not only goods, but also religious beliefs, customs, and traditions. For example, the spread of Buddhism from India to East Asia was facilitated by maritime trade routes. Buddhist monks traveled by ship to China, Korea, and Japan, bringing with them religious texts and teachings that would later become deeply ingrained in the cultures of these regions. Similarly, Islam spread across the Indian Ocean, with Arab traders establishing trading posts along the coasts of Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. These maritime routes allowed for the exchange of religious and cultural ideas that helped to shape the development of civilizations in these regions. The legacy of ancient ships in desert regions. The discovery of ancient ships in deserts is not just a remarkable archaeological find, it is also a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of early human civilizations. These ships, which were once vital to the survival and success of maritime cultures, are now relics of a forgotten era, preserved beneath the sands for thousands of years. The cultural significance of maritime technology played a central role in the development of early human societies, allowing them to explore new lands, trade goods, and exchange ideas across vast distances. Ships were symbols of power, wealth, and prestige, and their construction required advanced knowledge of engineering, materials, and navigation. The discovery of these ancient ships reminds us of the importance of maritime technology in shaping human history. It also challenges our assumptions about the development of early civilizations, suggesting that maritime cultures may have been more widespread and influential than previously believed. Preserving the legacy of ancient maritime cultures. As archaeologists continue to uncover more ancient ships in desert regions, it is important to preserve and study these artifacts to better understand the maritime cultures that once thrived in these regions. By analysing the construction techniques, materials, and design of these ships, researchers can gain valuable insights into the technological advancements of early human societies. Preserving these ships is also important for future generations, as they represent a crucial chapter in the history of human exploration, trade, and cultural exchange. Many of the ancient ships discovered in deserts are in a fragile state, having been buried beneath the sands for thousands of years. As such, efforts must be made to protect and conserve these artifacts, ensuring that they remain intact for future study. Could there be more ancient ships waiting to be discovered? As more ancient ships are discovered in deserts around the world, the question arises, could there be even more ships waiting to be uncovered? Given the vastness of deserts like the Sahara, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Atacama Desert, it is entirely possible that there are many more ships buried beneath the sands, waiting to be found. The potential for future discoveries. Advances in technology, such as satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and LiDAR, are making it easier than ever to search for hidden archaeological sites. These tools have already been instrumental in uncovering ancient ships in deserts, and they are likely to lead to even more discoveries in the coming years. For example, satellite imagery has revealed ancient riverbeds and lake basins in regions like the Sahara and the Arabian Peninsula, suggesting that these areas were once home to thriving maritime cultures. As archaeologists continue to investigate these regions, they may uncover more evidence of ancient ships and the civilizations that once relied on them. The role of climate change in revealing ancient ships. In some cases, natural forces such as wind erosion and shifting sand dunes may help to reveal more ancient ships buried in desert regions. As the desert landscape changes over time, previously hidden artifacts may be exposed, offering new opportunities for discovery. For example, in recent years, the remains of ancient cities and settlements have been uncovered in the Sahara Desert, as shifting sands have exposed previously buried structures. It is possible that similar processes could reveal more ancient ships in desert regions, providing further evidence of the maritime cultures that once thrived there. Rewriting human history with ancient ships. The discovery of ancient ships in desert regions has had a profound impact on our understanding of early human history. These ships challenge our assumptions about the development of ancient civilizations, suggesting that maritime cultures were far more widespread and influential than previously believed. By uncovering these ships and studying the cultures that built them, archaeologists are shedding new light on the complex trade networks, exploration routes, and cultural exchanges that shaped the ancient world. These discoveries are helping to rewrite the history of human civilization, revealing a world that was far more interconnected than we ever imagined. As more ancient ships are uncovered in deserts around the world, we will continue to learn more about the maritime cultures that once thrived in these regions. These ships are not just relics of the past, they are windows into a forgotten era, offering valuable insights into the ingenuity, resilience, and exploration of early human societies. And who knows what other surprises the deserts may hold. Perhaps there are even more ancient ships waiting to be discovered, buried beneath the sands, waiting to tell their story.